right, welcome to the Difference Makers, this show that highlights leaders, visionaries, and community voices making an impact across North Carolina. And in today's world, there's nothing more that makes a greater impact than our school boards. Now, today, my name is Alex Nelson. I'll be your host this afternoon. Today, we're joined by Alan Daniels, Republican candidate for the for Winston-Salem, Forsyth County School Board, the Board of Education in District 2. Alan is stepping forward to serve this community with focus on education, accountability, and the future of our very students, your children. It all hinges on this year. And we're going to be talking about his vision for the school system, challenges facing education today, and why he believes so strongly now is his time to lead. Alan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm looking forward to having a good conversation.
Well, thanks again, Mr. Allen. Thank you again. I really, really hope this goes over well, and I'm just excited. Alan, let's get started. Let's start with your background. What inspired you to run for the Forsyth County School Board of Education?
Well, I have been following very closely the Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools for about the last 7 or 8 years. I have 2 students in the district. One graduated 2 years ago. One will graduate this year. But the things that I saw going on in the district, as far as the quality of education, spurred me to run. Especially this year, last fiscal year, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools ended the year with a $45 million debt. And that debt came about because of reckless spending, for lack of a better word. There was nobody watching the books. And it's not like we spent $45 million out of fund balance and depleted our reserves. That had happened the year before. In the fiscal year that ended 24, they started the year with a $21 million fund balance, ended the year with a $5 million fund balance that the Board of Education did not know about and did not approve, that $16 million in overspending. Wow. The superintendent apologized and said, but she didn't apologize for what she spent it on. It all went to the students, et cetera, et cetera. But our audit didn't come out until March. And by then it was too late. And at that point they said, oh, and next year, 2025, which was by then the current year we were in at 9 months through, the deficit currently stands at $8 million.
Wow.
Well, it wasn't 8 million. It was 45 million. And so I was thinking about running, and then we had an incident about the day filing opened where a young man died in one of our schools as a result of a stabbing. It was ruled accidental, but be that as it may. There was a young man with a knife on campus, and in fact, the young man who brought the knife was a young man who ended up dying. And I'm like, no, yeah. I've got to get in. There's no accountability for student behavior. There's no accountability for grades. We are the lowest performing large urban district in the state of North Carolina.
Wow.
And there's no excuse for that other than people aren't watching the books and watching what's going on.
Well, I mean, you've brung up a lot of interesting subjects. You brung up safety, you've brung up finances. For you personally, this is just me and you talking and a couple thousand that's going to be listening to you out there. No pressure, right? What do you see as your biggest challenges or the biggest challenges currently facing this school system and the system in your district?
The biggest challenge is going to be retaining the quality teachers that we have and attracting quality teachers to replace the ones that have left. As part of the recovery from that deficit, we laid off, they call it RIFT, about 300 classroom educators. The vast majority of those were EC, or special education, exceptional children. So those children are not being served. And when they're in the general education population, those teachers do not have the support that they need to be able to teach a class of 30 with EC kids integrated into that classroom. So some of those teachers are leaving. Some of the EC teachers that are left are leaving because the workload is just impossible. So we're going to have to figure out, and part of the problem is the state. The state only funds 13% of the student population for special ed. In Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools, that number's 17%. So
Wow.
local funding has to cover the difference. And we were doing a great job of that. It wasn't the EC department that overspent. What overspent was operations and school leadership. But that's not where we made the cuts. Where we made the cuts was in the classroom. So it was devastating. And I haven't confirmed these numbers myself, but I have been told that since May of last year, when all of this came to light, it was revealed that we had not reduced our staff to align with the allotments from the state. So we were overemployed. We had too many employees for the amount of money we were getting from the state. So all those jobs had to be funded locally. So they said, we've got to reduce it down. We don't want to lay people off, but this is what the state's going to pay for. This is the allotment. So we've got to let people go.
Right.
Understood.
There's something called responsibility.
Right. The problem was our enrollment had been decreasing since 2023, but our number of employees, especially in central office administration, had been increasing. That's just not sustainable.
Right.
That was irresponsible on the part of the superintendent and all those in finance who were supposed to be letting her know what was going on. So then they said, oh, and it's just come to light within the last 2 weeks, with maybe since March 5th, I think was when the last report from the Office of the State Auditor came out and said, oh, we discovered in September that $15 million in expenses was kept off the books, and in September was backdated to June. And my question was, is that 15 million part of the 45 million, or is it addition to? Well, they say it's part of. Well, we've been talking about $45 million since June. If it's part of it, then how was it only discovered in September?
Well,
So
Caesar,
the trust is not there that if a teacher comes to work in this district, they're going to have a job at the end of the year, or that their job is going to be sustainable and they're going to have the support they need to actually be able to do the job they want to do.
Alan, just to play devil's advocate just for a minute, you don't know how many times I've woken up in the morning and not realized that I misplaced $45 million. I mean, it happens all the time. But all jokes aside, this is really helping Forsyth County, Winston-Salem schools and Forsyth County parents to get really more involved in the process, more involved in their child's education, that among other things as well. But parents are becoming more engaged in the education decisions. Now, how do you plan to work with families? Because you brought it up. How do you plan on working with the families to ensure their voices are being heard and their questions are being answered?
Well, I've actually had a Facebook page for a number of years where parents who feel reluctant to reach out because they don't want to put a target on their kid's back, or employees who want to reach out and don't want to risk losing their job, will reach out to me and say, this is what's going on, and I want it out there, but I don't want my name attached to it. So I've been doing that for the last 7 years. And nobody has ever been identified. Nobody that's ever reached out to me has ever been identified. But the problems have become known. And that's the role I would continue. If the situation is, I can do that now because I'm not subject to public records. If I'm elected to the board, every communication between me and a parent, unless the attorney says this is privileged, is public record. But my door would always be open. My email is always open. And I would do my dead level best to make sure that there would never be any repercussions for a staff member reaching out to talk about a problem, or for a parent reaching out to talk about a problem. The thing that we have to remember is, as they say, there's 3 sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. So
Forsyth County's whistleblower program.
The way you solve the problem is you don't discount what anybody says until you've researched it and determined what the truth is to the best of your ability. Because, I mean, we all know, anybody that's got kids knows that when your kid comes home from school and tells you something happened, that's not all of it.
Right.
There's more to it than that. And that's the way I've always operated. I don't ever automatically believe that my kid is telling me everything that went on. Show me video evidence, let me talk to 2 or 3 other people that saw it, and let's see if we all have the same story. If we all have the same story, then we've got a situation we need to deal with.
Well, earlier when we were talking, you mentioned something about teachers' retention. Now, teacher retention and support is a major issue across North Carolina. Now, I'm the first to tell you, I'm dealing with teacher issues now that, to be honest with you, they have no business being teachers. But 98% of our teachers really do come in and do a hard work and a good service and are underpaid. But what are your thoughts about how to better support our educators and actually be there for them in your position?
Well, the biggest thing is, and I spent a year in the classroom as a math teacher, and the lack of support that I received from my administration over the behavior issues was just disheartening. I mean, I was a high school math teacher, and I was having stuff thrown at me when my back was turned. And my administrator's response was, you can't turn your back on these kids. I'm like, wow, it's going to be a long year. And we can't say that. It has to be, and my take on it is, I believe in excellence. And the way you achieve excellence is through accountability. If a student doesn't take care of business in the classroom, if they don't do their work, they're not going to pass. They're going to have to repeat that class or that grade. And if there's true accountability, then everybody's going to go, whoa, I don't really want to repeat 3rd grade or 5th grade or 8th grade. So maybe I better put forth a little effort. And as far as behavior goes, if your behavior impacts the education of 29 other kids, and especially the safety of those kids and the teacher, then if we can't get this resolved, then you're going to need to find an alternative place to learn where you can get the support that you need to get your academics in line and to learn how to handle your emotions in a way that will be acceptable in society. Because school is the training ground for life. And as I told my students, if you mess up in the real world, you will be held accountable. So you might as well learn it while it's easy, because failing a grade is not a big deal. If you don't pay your car payment and you lose your car, that's a big deal. If you
Yeah.
don't pay your house payment and you lose your house, that's a big deal. And if you get away for 13 years with thinking, oh, I don't need to do anything and I'm still going to pass from grade to grade to grade and walk across stage and get that little piece of paper and say, I'm done. Well, try that for the next year and see where it gets you. You'll find yourself, and I've seen recently where the research is showing, and my son is Gen Z. My daughter, I don't know what exactly where those borders are, but probably both my kids are Gen Z. And they're saying that 25% of Gen Z employees don't have their first job at the end of their first year because they don't have a work ethic. They don't understand accountability. They don't understand showing up every day, showing up on time, doing their work instead of being on their phone. Those are the things you need to learn K through 12.
Mhm.
And once you've accepted the fact that life isn't always just fun, sometimes you have to do some hard work. And you can't just smart off your mouth, or you can't hit somebody because they did something you don't like. If you do, there will be consequences. You hit somebody in the real world, you might find yourself sitting in a jail cell.
Yeah, we're a
It's a whole
hospital.
lot easier to learn that when you're 6 than it is when you're 19.
There's been a lot of conversation around curriculum and transparency. Where do you stand on giving parents more insight into what their children are being taught?
Well, most of the curriculum now is online. And I will say this, I spent 36 years as a software developer, so I understand the value of technology. But the recent research has shown that when kids learn material online, they don't learn it as well and don't retain it as well as if they read it from a book. Even if you read the exact same material, you don't retain it as well.
Hmm.
If you take a test on the computer, you don't do as well as if you take the test on paper and pencil. That said, I think for the most part, my experience has been that, as you said, 98% of our teachers are doing what they're supposed to do, and parents don't really have a need to be concerned. As I've heard teachers say, if I could indoctrinate your child, I would indoctrinate them to behave in class and do their work, but I can't. So if I can't indoctrinate them to that, how am I going to indoctrinate them to some big political, yeah, idea? You know, I the curriculum is available and out there. I would say 98% of the teachers have it on Canvas or whatever operation, whatever program the district is using. So you can look over your kid's shoulder and see exactly what they're doing, exactly what books they're reading, exactly what the papers they're writing, all of that stuff. And if any parent has a concern, 99, 98, 99% of the teachers are going to welcome you to come in and see what's going on, not necessarily sit in on the classroom. Some will, some won't. In some schools, that's a concern. But to sit down in a meeting and say, this is what I did it with when I was in the classroom. If a parent came in with a concern about why their kid's failing, I'd get out my 3-inch binder and I'd say, this is what we've done for the last quarter. And then I didn't give homework. So all of the work was done in the classroom. And every kid either had a binder if they brought one, or I had a manila folder that all their stuff was in. Here's what your kid has done for the last quarter. And they're like, why are all the pages blank? Well, because they didn't do anything. Okay. I mean, there it is. And so all of a sudden they're not mad at me anymore. They're wanting to know why their kid's not doing anything in class. And if you've got that documentation, I'm a huge believer in documentation. I said excellence through accountability. And the accountability comes with transparency. If I'm willing to lay everything, here's the test, here's my key, here's what your kid put on the test. That's why they failed. Okay. This is what I was expecting. This is what they gave me. Why didn't you know the answers to the test? Oh, probably because you didn't take any notes for the week before. So, I think 99% of teachers don't have a problem with that. There's good and bad in every profession. If you run into a teacher that doesn't want to show you what they're doing, that might be a reason for concern, and you take that up the chain. They've got a principal. The principal's got an area in our district anyway. The principal's got an area superintendent, and the area superintendent's got a superintendent. And at some point, you get what you need.
Oh, you answered my next question, so I'm going to go and jump ahead just a little bit. The other question was going to be on student performance and accountability. I think you've addressed that. But now, school safety is a concern of mine and a concern of a lot of people. As a past school resource officer myself, school safety continues to be a priority for many, many families. I think you brought up a young man that passed away out of one of our local schools. But what measures do you believe, you personally, are necessary to keep our students and staff safe?
Well, I think it goes back to that accountability. If you physically assault a student or a teacher in a classroom in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools, it would be my recommendation that you are immediately transferred to an alternative setting. I'm not talking about pushing and shoving, but if you get in a knockdown drag out and it can be shown that you were the instigator, then you need to go to an alternative setting. And the time that you would normally spend in elective courses, your electives are going to be, and this gets a bad rap, social emotional learning. Some people throw indoctrination into that bucket. And that's not what I mean by social emotional learning. To me, social is we as a society getting along. Emotional, we all have emotions, learning how to handle them. So social emotional learning is learning how to deal with difficult situations when things don't go your way. And if every time something doesn't go your way, you explode, then it's obvious that you need some more support in that area of your life. There are kids who can work through that, where they get bullied and it doesn't seem to bother them. And there are other kids that if they get bullied, they go off. But that's the other side of it, is the kids that get bullied and it doesn't seem to bother, at a certain point, it's going to start to bother. And that's when bad things happen, when they've had all they can take. So even bullying, even verbal abuse, verbal barbs directed at another, if that's repeated and you can't learn pretty quickly to stop that, then you're going to go to an alternative setting. And the first time you do that, you're going to be called into a conference, and we're going to have a sit down about how your behavior is hurting not only you, but everybody else. Kindness goes a long way toward making the world a whole lot better. It's free. There's nothing hard about being nice to somebody.
I don't know. Evidently, it might be. There's a whole lot of hate and discontent right now, and it just seems to be easier for people. But let me jump right to the meat and potatoes, as my grandfather used to say, Alan. If elected, what what does success look like? After 2 or 3 months in office, what does success look like to Mr. Allen?
Well, the first thing is, if I walk into a classroom, if there's conversation going on, it's conversation about the lesson. If I walk into a classroom, I don't see, and we've got a district policy, no cell phone policy. I can tell you that's not followed. We have a state law that says no cell phone policy. No cell phones in the classroom unless the teacher says it's okay. Well, there's the problem. Because for some teachers, it's just easier to say okay than to deal with the issues if you try to take them away. It can be done. I mean, a lot of people are starting to realize, and some people are still fighting it, that cell phones and social media is what is literally rotting our children's brains.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they hit TikTok and watch a 20-second video, that's dopamine hitting their brain and they're addicted. So when a kid loses it, when you see a 3-year-old have an absolute meltdown because mom took the phone away, that's withdrawal. That's withdrawal just as the same as a heroin addict trying to come off of heroin.
Hmm.
So these kids are getting stimulated 12 hours a day at school, at home. And then when you try to slow things down and say, think a minute, oh, that's too hard. I don't want to think. So to me, success would look like kids actually in the classroom learning, not rote memorization, not just read it and spit it back out, but think about it and be able to answer real life questions about how this applies to life. And engaged, and 90% of our teachers are engaging in their lessons, maybe 98%. Engaging doesn't necessarily mean fun. Okay, we have this assumption that school ought to be fun. I told my kids, my own two, your job for the next 13 years is to get an education. Sometimes it's going to be easy, sometimes it's going to be hard. But when it gets hard, you just got to put in the extra work. And we've got to help our kids understand that life isn't always easy and life isn't always fun. We want to make it fun as long as fun works, but sometimes you just, and it's interesting to me, and I'm not anti-extracurricular, anti-sports. I wrestled when I was in high school. I was in the marching band when I was in high school. So I understand the value of those things. But that's the only place in education anymore where we celebrate excellence. In our school board meeting on Tuesday a week ago, this past Tuesday, we recognized all the state champions from all the schools in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. There were teams and there were individuals, and we recognized all them. So I've asked the question to our administration and school board, are we going to acknowledge all the valedictorians from our high schools come May? Are they going to be brought across the stage at a school board meeting and get a standing ovation? Why do we celebrate excellence on the sports field, but we're okay with mediocrity in the classroom? 99%, literally, this is not just throwing a number out there, 99% of high school athletes will never make the pros. Most of them won't even make it to college athlete. So what's your plan B? Mm-hmm. It's great to say, I have a goal to be an NFL quarterback, or I have a goal to be a point guard on an NBA team. Great. If you're willing to put in the work to do that, why are you not willing to put in the work to pass your classes? Because being able to play a sport requires at a high level, requires an unbelievable amount of dedication and hard work. So why are we not willing, and why do we not encourage kids, and why do we not stress the importance of excellence in everything you do?
Alan, we talked about a lot of subject matters today. I want you to look at the camera for me, please, and just give me a 60-second, just boiled down review of Mr. Alan Daniel, and tell me why the thousands and thousands of people that are looking at you right now should come out on Voters Day and put that little circle around Mr. Alan Daniels.
I believe in our public school system. I believe in excellence. And I believe that every student in the district, unless they have differences of some kind that prevents them from reaching a level of excellence in education, every student is capable of reaching grade level proficiency and successfully attaining a high school education and graduating and then being productive in life, whether they go straight from high school to a job or whether they go on to college and take a job that requires a 4-year degree. We are not currently serving our students well in that regard. I would push for excellence in the classroom with our teachers, with our administrators. Excellence should be the standard for everyone in the district, the school board, the administration, the superintendent. We've got a new superintendent. He's 3 months in, had a lot on his plate. I'm confident that he's going to be a leader that will guide us. What he needs is a school board who will support him to take this district to excellence. What I want to see for Winston-Salem, Forsyth County Schools at the end of my 4 years is that we are well on our way to being the #1 district, not in North Carolina, the #1 district between the Mississippi River and the Atlantic Ocean, between Washington, D.C. and Key West, Florida. If we can do that, it will solve so many community problems. Education is the ticket out of poverty. A quality education system attracts big business. We've lost an awful lot of big business out of Winston-Salem. We used to have Wachovia Bank. We used to have BB&T. We used to have a lot, Reynolds Tobacco Company. This town was made up of big business that supported the district. Those people are gone. We need to attract those kind of employers back so that the kids that are coming out of school, whether they go straight to work or whether they get a degree in accounting or engineering, have a place to go to work and stay in Forsyth County and build up Forsyth County.
Well, Alan, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for really sharing your vision of education for District 2. I really appreciate that. All of our listeners appreciate that. Now, thank you to our listeners, as I just brought you up, for turning into the difference makers, where we bring you the stories and the voices that are shaping our communities. And right now, I will tell you, from our judges to our school board members, it's extremely important for you to come out, look at these candidates, and listen to what they're saying. I want you to stay engaged. I want you to stay informed. This is Alex Nelson. We'll see you next time. Old man out.
Thank you.
Thank you.